I want you to picture a scenario that's probably a little too familiar. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. You're lying awake, staring at the ceiling, and your mind is racing through every possible financial disaster that could strike tomorrow. Your car could break down, your laptop might die, you could lose your job, or maybe your pet needs emergency surgery. Most people think financial milestones are just arbitrary numbers that rich people made up to make the rest of us feel inadequate, but there is actual psychology and mathematics behind why certain amounts of money create dramatic shifts in your day-to-day existence. The first real game changer isn't $1 million or even 100,000, it is times 10,000. Before we look at what makes that number special, think about what life looks like without it. You know that feeling when you're at the grocery store and you're mentally calculating whether you can afford the name brand cereal or if you need to stick with the generic version that tastes like cardboard. Or when your friend suggests going out to dinner and you have to come up with some creative excuse because you can't admit that $25 for a meal would mess up your entire budget for the week. This is the reality for millions of people who are living paycheck to paycheck. Every financial decision becomes a careful calculation, and every unexpected expense feels like a potential catastrophe. You're constantly playing defense with your money instead of being able to make proactive choices about your future. The first thing that changes when you accumulate your first $10,000 is your relationship with risk. When you have zero savings, every decision feels dangerous. Taking a new job, moving to a different city, or even planning a vacation becomes this massive source of stress because you know that one wrong move could leave you financially devastated. But when you have $10,000 sitting in your account, suddenly these same decisions feel manageable. You're not necessarily going to quit your job tomorrow and become a professional juggler, but you might finally have the confidence to ask for that promotion you've been thinking about for months. You might be willing to invest in yourself by taking a course or certification that could boost your earning potential. The safety net doesn't make you reckless, but it does give you permission to think beyond just surviving until the next paycheck. There's also something fascinating that happens to your brain chemistry when you see a 5-figure balance for the first time. Neuroscientists have found that financial security actually reduces cortisol levels, which is your body's primary stress hormone. This means that reaching $10,000 doesn't just change your finances, it literally changes how your body responds to daily challenges. Think about that check engine light on your dashboard. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, that light might as well be a countdown timer to financial disaster. You're immediately stressed about repairs or whether you'll need to borrow money from family. But when you have $10,000 saved, that same light becomes a simple inconvenience. You're annoyed, sure, but you're not panicked. This shift from panic to mild annoyance has ripple effects throughout your entire life. When you're not constantly worried about money, you make better decisions in general. You sleep better, you're more productive at work, and you're more patient with your family and friends. Financial stress affects every aspect of human behavior, and removing that stress unlocks mental energy that you can redirect toward actually improving your situation. The majority of the benefit doesn't come from spending the money. It comes from knowing the money is there. This is what financial experts call the emergency fund effect. It isn't really about the emergencies. It's about the peace of mind that comes from knowing you can handle them. Most people who build up $10,000 never actually spend it on emergencies. Instead, they spend it on opportunities. They invest in education, they start businesses, or they move to better locations because they have the mental bandwidth to focus on increasing their income. There is also a confidence factor that is hard to quantify but impossible to ignore. When you know you have money in the bank, you carry yourself differently. You negotiate better, and you're more willing to walk away from bad deals because you're not desperate. This confidence often leads to better job opportunities and better life outcomes in general. The hardest part of this process isn't saving the money itself. It is developing the identity of someone who saves money. Most people approach saving like a temporary diet where they cut expenses aggressively and then burn out. But people who successfully reach $10,000 don't think of saving as a temporary sacrifice. They think of it as becoming a different type of person. And this identity shift is crucial because it affects every financial decision you make. Saving your first $1,000 is brutal and requires significant willpower, but saving your second $1,000 is noticeably easier because you've already developed the habits and mindset. By the time you're working toward your fifth or $6,000, the process feels almost automatic. This amount of money can cover the vast majority of unexpected expenses that derail people financially, meaning once you reach this milestone, you're effectively immune to most of the disasters that keep people stuck in the paycheck-to-paycheck cycle. Another major psychological phenomenon that disappears at this level is decision fatigue. Every day you make thousands of tiny financial decisions, such as whether to buy generic pasta or the name brand, or whether you can afford to grab lunch today. Each of these micro decisions burns mental energy, and by the end of the day, you're exhausted from constantly calculating your survival. But when you have $10,000 in the bank, 90% of these daily decisions become irrelevant. You're not choosing pasta based on your bank account. You're choosing based on what you actually prefer. Imagine how much mental energy you would free up if you stopped having to make survival-based calculations 50 times per day. Having this money doesn't make you rich, and it doesn't mean you can quit your job forever, but it gives you breathing room. And breathing room is the foundation of every good financial decision. When you're not gasping for financial air, you can actually think strategically about your money instead of just reacting to whatever crisis pops up next. Individual dollars start feeling less precious, which actually makes you more willing to spend money on things that could increase your earning potential. For example, a person with no savings might skip a $50 networking event because it feels like a lot of money, but a person with $10,000 might attend and end up meeting someone who offers them a job that pays $5,000 more per year. If $10,000 is where you find your peace, $20,000 is the first major threshold that separates those who will build significant wealth from those who will stay stuck. Think of building wealth like pushing a heavy boulder up a hill. Getting it started is the hardest part, but once you build enough momentum and reach the top, the boulder starts moving faster and eventually rolls down the other side almost effortlessly. $20,000 is that turning point where your financial boulder finally crests the hill. Everything before this point feels like you're pushing uphill against gravity. Everything after feels like gravity is finally working in your favor. When you don't have money saved, your brain operates in survival mode, filtering every decision through fear and scarcity. You take the first job offer that comes along because you can't afford to be picky. But when you cross $20,000, your brain has the space to think proactively about growth. Research shows that having just $2,000 in emergency savings increases your financial well-being by 21%. When you push that to 3 to 6 months of living expenses, which for most people is around $20,000, you get another 13% boost. The mathematics also start getting really exciting at this stage. If you're saving $1,000 every month and earning an 8% return, getting to your first $20,000 takes about 19 months. But here's the part that will blow your mind. Your second $20,000 only takes about 17 months. You did the exact same amount of work and saved the same amount of money, but you shaved 2 full months off the timeline because your first $20,000 was working alongside you, generating its own returns. By the time you're going for your third $20,000, the timeline shrinks even more. And once you hit $400,000 in your portfolio, you can generate your next $20,000 in just 5 months. The same amount that took you nearly 2 years to save initially is now happening automatically. This is why hitting $20,000 feels like such a turning point. A 10% return on $2,000 is only $200, which is nice but not life-changing, but a 10% return on $20,000 is $2,000, which is money that actually matters. You're starting to see money flow into your account without you having to lift a finger. This milestone also gives you walking away money, meaning you could quit a toxic job tomorrow and survive for months while you find something better. This psychological shift affects everything about your career.